And now we are waiting for questions from the auditorium or from cross discussions between you here on the podium. We talk about, in general, the benefits of SiC that will help us to get less loss in any kind of application. So Muzaffer, ROHM is very good known to work on silicon carbide. And what I see, you have a mirrored camera.
No, it's unmuted. Yes.
Yeah, ROHM is backwards.
Ah, okay. Can I change it?
No, it's like OTAN, the NATO headquarters in Brussels. If you drive by at the main gate, it's called OTAN to hide what NATO has there. Okay. My backstage tells me no questions so far. Then let me put a general question in. There is a big discussion always that the wide bandgap is too expensive and the cost is higher. I have my perspective at that point that we always have to look in the system solutions at the end. I would like to hear some kind of your opinion to that topic, because a lot of people just measure technical progress on price. Who likes to start, make some comments on that?
I can put a comment in, Bodo, if that helps.
Yeah, Llew.
So we done some modeling a couple of years ago, looking at silicon carbide versus silicon IGBTs, and we looked over the 10-year stretch, and we were looking at the whole process, wafer to the die, and this was looking at cost. And at the time, we were looking at 150 millimeter, but we took the assumption it was going to go to a 200 millimeter substrate. So we built in the cost for that. Also moving from a planar gate to a trench gate, how that affects everything, and yield increases. So we built in a model of assumptions for a 10-year stretch. And then also we looked at the silicon IGBTs, and obviously majorities at 200 millimeter, but there's amounts at 300 millimeter. So we looked at 300 millimeter over the 10 years. And then we done the cost analysis. What we saw with silicon carbide is there's a parity in about 2029, a cost parity at 200 millimeter silicon carbide processing versus the 200 millimeter silicon IGBTs. However, if we look at the 300 millimeter versus a 200 millimeter, still the silicon IGBTs come in. I think it was about 30% cheaper than the silicon carbide, which is still a good number considering the system solution benefits you can bring. So just to answer that in summary is that from the modeling we done, we saw a cost parity, but that was 200 versus 200. We still have to assume silicon goes to 300 in the majority case. So there's still a slight cost differentiation between IGBTs and silicon carbide.
Thank you, Llew. I also assume that in some cases, the application area for wide bandgap would benefit from lower weight in the system, like going into airspace, and that's all to be taken in consideration.
And also, okay, yes, I would like also make the comment in that maybe before the question sessions will be started, the silicon carbide offered is not only increasing of the switching frequency by decreasing also the losses. Through this switching from silicium to silicon carbide, also the consideration to make the revision on the topology level, and for example, from 3 level to the 2 level is giving also the possibility by some application to not only then reduce the number of the used semiconductor devices, also reducing of the sizes. This will be additional effects to decrease the whole size and whole cost on the end in the system level.
Muzaffer, I fully understand. And if you go from 3 to 2 level, you reduce the device count, which has a positive impact on the reliability calculation.
Yeah.
Also, maybe if I could add a comment. If you look at the higher voltage stuff, so 1.7 kilovolt and above, for example, silicon carbide MOSFETs for auxiliary power supply of heavy-duty industrial stuff, photovoltaic, etc. The SiC MOSFET are indeed already cheaper than silicon MOSFET in this area. So silicon is not cheaper all across the board. Let's say there are already some places where SiC can claim, you know, it's the cheapest technology, comparing component to component. And of course, then all the remarks about the simplification of the system design apply here as well. So you actually can get very significant cost saving by designing some application with SiC.
Thank you, Francois. We had a question coming in. Could you pop them up? Here is the question. And the question is addressed to Navitas. Navitas was well known for designing GaN and GaN IC. And now Navitas is quite new in the SiC area, right? Did the company work on SiC before the acquisition of GaNSiC, or did it really begin when Ranbir and his team joined you? That's the question to Navitas, to Llew.
Yeah. Yes, we took a recent acquisition with GeneSiC a few months ago now, and yeah, prior to that, Navitas was purely focused on gallium nitride. That's where the roots started, and that was a pure focus for us. Was, you know, integrating the GaN, the driver, and the protection features, and that's been a successful venture for us. What we what we realized when we went to higher powers and higher voltage classes is that there's obviously the trade-off with silicon carbide and GaN. And that's at the end of the day, we wanted to give the customer the right technology for the right solution and the right application. So I think what we've done by going both GaN and SiC is offered the customer this next generation wide bandgap device agnostic kind of solution. So it's up to the customer what they want to choose, I guess. But to answer the question, Navitas was very focused on GaN prior to this. And when we acquired GeneSiC, yes, Rambert's team, I've been focused on this for 20 years plus on silicon carbide. So the technology from GeneSiC is very high performing, it's very robust because it was very focused at the high voltage technologies. Now we've brought that down into the low voltage classes.
Okay. I think that's a good move. Have you together and serving GaN and SiC. As I know Ranbier for years, I think they had a good kind of products developed. Backstage has no new questions. Anything in between the authors to bring up? Helen, you have any idea what the future steps in general could bring us for SiC?
Yeah, I think just as we kind of touched on a little bit with some of the cost benefit, a lot of systems and applications above 1200 volts are really moving to silicon carbide, and that's really the trend that we're seeing for the future.
That's good to hear. So I like your nice Arizona background. It's now sun shining and warm there.
Winter in the desert.
Yeah. I should also pull Zhang into the discussion. Basic Semiconductor is a relatively new company at the market, and you have a lot of plans. So what are the key regions where you plan to serve customers? In some cases, you need to have application support in the local area. Is this something you can tell us a little bit about?
Oh, yes, of course. Thanks for the question. And basically, our customer are mainly photovoltaics from the photovoltaic energy storage and EV and the charging sections. And also, actually, following some of your previous topic is very interesting because using silicon carbide actually brought quite some benefits to the EV market, which we are very interested in. That's because actually we can't. When we first promote silicon carbide to our customers, like in China, we found that they were not so interested because obviously the price is much higher. The unit price is much higher considering the same current output and same voltage level. But later, when we approached them more, they found out that the system cost, especially including the batteries, can be countered and can be balanced out by the use of silicon carbide because the efficiency start to increase, especially under low load conditions, where you don't have to pay for the for the PN junction voltage drop for the silicon IGBT, especially under low loads. Because like in vehicles, normally, I think most of our guests and viewers probably know that when cruising is only about like 20 kilowatts, 30 kilowatts, and you don't have to use all 300 kilowatts all at once. So that at the low end of the low spectrum, that is the silicon carbide, where it can provide more benefit and loss, and in terms of losses, so that you have lower, like lower losses, lower requirement for the cooling and all the rest benefits. So the system cost can be lower. And for the future of the customer, we certainly want to serve our customer to achieve higher operating temperature of the device, which means that they can use the device much harder, and also looking for higher frequency so that they can achieve higher power density, and also for higher voltage, which with the benefits of higher power. And that's our basic vision of the silicon carbide and how we're going to try to serve our customer better. Thank you.
Thank you, Zhang.
I would like this make this also a short comment in this. Which market you asked? Which market that you are seeing the silicon carbide? This looks like there's some domino effects. As you know, then e-mobility is drastically increasing, or there will be increasing in the coming years, and there's required additionally infrastructure, regardless of the charging station. That's been one domino to the other dominoes. And additionally, the energy resources needed to be somehow supported under the grid voltage. And also the renewable energies will be driven through this e-mobility increasing. And all these three angles will be in the coming years definitely for the silicon carbide is a focused area. Most of charging stations, because they are coming in the bidirectionality requests in the coming years, will be then more expected is a topic. And by using the silicon carbide technology, for example, by 2-level, the bidirectionality features is going to be more easy in comparison to by silicium by 3-level or some more complex in topology. Therefore, I see that same like basic semiconductor. I see that three application will be then definitely main focus for the silicon carbide on the high power segment.
Thank you, Muzaffer. So
also maybe if I can add a comment, we are talking about so maybe an obvious comment, but when we talk about system switching to silicon carbide, it doesn't have to mean that the designer are going to use 100% silicon carbide in the system. So there are also these little steps. You start looking at your design. Hey, where which is the switch that can replace with wide bandgap? Maybe just a diode or 2 diodes, something like this. Needs to switch fast, and mix silicon switches with silicon carbide switches can already bring, in many cases, very big advantage in terms of performance, without necessarily having to have a full SiC designs with MOSFETs, etc. And this is also what we see you know, this kind of diffusion of silicon carbide technologies in the way that people start looking, hey, where can I optimize my stuff, right? I can change maybe this switch in out of I don't know, 5, 10. I change first this switch, I get some benefits, then people start looking, okay, let's think about the next step, etc., etc. This is also the way it goes, and it doesn't mean that when people don't have to think that, you know, they are going to immediately triple or quadruple the cost of their bill of material if they start using silicon carbide. You can get already very good improvement by just replacing strategically a few switch in your design, and then, you know, start from here.
Francois, I just fully with you. In the early days, just IGBTs combined with an SiC freewheeling diode did a great job at solar inverters, and that's already 20 years ago nearly.
Yeah, but still, we still see this kind of approach in some power supplies. You know, people start, you know, they replace the rectification diodes by silicon carbide as first step, and then maybe in the next steps they will say, oh, why not replace everything, because we got good experience with the first step. So it's not like it's not an all or nothing proposition. You know, you can very well design.
Absolutely.
Maybe sometimes we lose this from sight. You know, that you can actually mix silicon carbide with other things and get awesome results in your design.
Thank you, Francois. Here is a question. Qorvo has a cascode solution with SiC and JFETs. What voltage ratings does this have the most benefit?
So I guess this is a question for me, Bodo.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you kind of think about the cascode or the JFET that it's built upon, really it replacing the MOSFET resistance, the silicon carbide MOSFET channel resistance, with a low voltage, low on resistance silicon MOSFET to create the normally off switch. So you get the benefit of the very low specific on resistance of the vertical trench JFET, and you replace the sort of low mobility channel with a you know, silicon MOS. And so if you just kind of look at a pie chart versus voltage rating of where that benefit plays most, you'll find it's between the 600 volts up to, let's say, 2 kV and above. At 3 kV, the channel resistance of the silicon carbide MOSFET starts to become not a really dominating factor. And so the difference between the specific on resistance of those two structures starts to sort of wane, right? One other sort of second order effect of the cascode, though, is that the integral diode is formed by a silicon PN junction with the series resistance of the JFET. And so when the body diode or the integral diode of the cascode conducts, you don't have any bipolar injection in the silicon carbide. And so this sort of mitigates one sort of failure mechanism in the silicon carbide.
Thank you, Pete. The next question is arriving. I got this notification, and here we are. So for the 650 volt space in telecom infrastructure, silicon MOSFETs are still relevant with good performance and cost effectiveness. What are our speakers' view for this voltage class being replaced by SiC or GaN? Pete, you have an idea?
Yeah, so we see in the data center sort of power supply market moving to totem pole PFC.
Pete,
yeah.
The question was about telecom satellite space. If we get the question back, in space for the space infrastructure, and normally these are high-rel Red Hat devices. I had played around with this when I worked for Harris. So the first thing is then, are we doing at your place SiC in Red Hat for space? Because these silicon MOSFETs, which are here probably in place, are Red Hat for the space applications.
We don't have a rad-hard line, but you can imagine that the silicon carbide JFET and its absence of any gate oxide is inherently a rad-hard structure.
That's good.
I would piggyback and say that GaN as a material is typically rad-hard. So a lot of applications for space do use GaN. So at 650 volts, I would assume GaN would be used in space quite a bit.
Okay. So we need to see that these products are standard available. I think that's the point I would look at. Any comments from Littelfuse?
Yeah. I think the original question was really about the ICT infrastructure, not necessarily on space.
Okay.
But
maybe
anyway, yeah. So 650 volts for SiC, so it's a bit out of the playground of Littelfuse. So we are mostly focused on higher voltage and more industrial stuff. For 650 volt, well, yes, SiC diodes for sure are interesting, and as far as I know, there are no good or not at all GaN diodes in this area. I've not checked lately, but I don't think there are diodes. For transistors, for MOSFETs, I used to work a lot for GaN a few years ago, and I know that GaN is absolutely incredible in 650 volt. So what I think technically GaN is extremely strong. What SiC has as advantage in this case, I think, is a much more mature supply chain and much more suppliers. So it might look safer, maybe from the point of view of a customer willing to move to wide bandgap to work with SiC instead of GaN. And I think, if I remember well, conference material from the past years, there have been already lots of demonstrators showing that SiC in power factor corrections, also in totem pole, is very, very close to GaN in terms of performance. So it's very close, and it has the advantage of being probably a more mature technology, maybe less scary. But I have to say that, from my background, I know that GaN is pretty awesome as well in this area. And
okay,
yeah.
Thank you, Francois. We come more or less to an end at that point. We have no more questions here. I like to thank you all for being available for the round table discussion of your presentations here. And I wish you all a great evening, afternoon, or night, wherever you are in this world located. And mostly, I wish to all of us in the world to have peace on the globe. And so we will continue our conference tomorrow, and hopefully next year's event could be a real one again in Munich. I was hesitating by still having Corona around and having restrictions in areas of the world that we said digital, virtual would be the best to do it. So all the best, and thank you for making the event a success, and see you probably soon at one of the conferences again, maybe APEC or PCIM, which will be the next power conferences in the upcoming year. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, friends. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.